So I'd have to give a brief introduction to what we're doing today. I'm going to cover basically a quick introduction of the workshop background. I'm going to go over some lessons learned from our BBA funded projects from ISEN, some conceptual applications of pit tag arrays from Tributary, and moving forward with some regional considerations. I wanted to thank everybody who participated in helping get this meeting started and organized as a planning group. We had several partners from multiple tribes and state agencies participate. And I want to also thank PNAM for helping facilitate this meeting. We wouldn't be here today without these members and everybody in the room. As everybody saw within the agenda and the invite, the workshop goals to share information, discuss current practices and standards, set the stage for later work. We're going to be hoping to have some more ongoing discussions and some forums within PNAM and some continuing documentation on web, Google Docs and other things to move us forward within the Tributary bid array process. And this really kicked off last spring with the NOSA workshop that PNAM helped facilitate. That when we talk about message review, there was a lot of interest in how NOSA statement information was generated from steelhead statement from bid arrays, and there was a recommendation really to try to carry forward and bring people from the pit tag steering committees together and the Tributary biologists together to talk about the importance of the arrays and what we're doing. So, as I said, the workshop objectives, we want to talk about protocols and standards. I think we've covered most of this, and maybe I'll get back some of your time with Sharon's introduction. But basically, what are the protocols? We're looking at the protocols for in-stream operations and maintenance. We're looking at protocols for data management and consideration of future pit arrays in the region. Where do we want them? What does the network look like? Where are we missing them? Where could they be installed? What different technologies exist? Where do we go in the future? And really, we wanted to initiate that process for that regional collaboration and discussion on pit arrays. So I want to jump into some lessons learned that we've had at BBA from our ISEN project. Most of this is considered presented and will be available from ISEN project or its child project, which is 2018-002, which is the in-stream pit array O&M project. That project just started off again in 2018. On average, we're spending about $2 million just BPA alone in pit array O&M and maintenance. We've got differences in where sites are placed, how much we're spending on O&M, how much we have in property inventories, and how different operators and contracts use resources to acquire technology to maintain their arrays. There's definitely, from the biologist side, there's an intense need for operational metadata. So if you're taking information from a pit array, you need to know what the data says, how that array was operating, especially for run reconstruction information. Also, there's a big lesson learned that we've had in changes in kind of technology. Things are becoming obsolete. 3G modems are no longer accessible and dying on us, so we have to replace it with 4G, doing 5G, 6G, and we'll continue to have those discussions. I think one of the other things is that we started down the process of creating an independent project as a pilot to look at how do we really focus on some O&M and managing the arrays and smart management of the infrastructure that ISEN created and started. But we recognize that that's only a small fraction of the pit arrays that we have in the region. Again, that's about 68 of the 202 that we know that are in tributaries. And under that pilot project, we had Biomark, NESPERS, and WFW helping us implement an approach to operations and management of those in-stream arrays. On this presentation, which will be available later, you can click on the reports icon, and that will take you to the reports of the project and or the integrated assessment maintenance inventory as well. You can look at some of the information that's been provided to BBA from those reports. So right now, also, the various protocols have been documented. There's a lot more literature out there. There's a lot more approaches than just modernresources.org, but under modernresources.org for BBA, where we contract to document protocols, these are pit tag array protocols and operation procedures that have been starting point for communication of what people are doing in the basin. There are various ways that people are operating it, various equipment, various infrastructure, and assets that you may be employing and implement that. Some of the challenges that we have from the iCenter example is that many of our sites lack cultural resource permits. We have the EPA and the Environmental Compliance Division that can actually do that for you. So if you need that resource, EPA has resources to help you get your EC information and contact you with us, and they'll help you. We had problems, obviously I mentioned modem problems. Many areas, 3G modems are now going obsolete. For people who use modems, we recognize there's other technology, whether it's satellite or it's manual retrieval of information, but there's a lot of information associated with changes on infrastructure. So on infrastructure requirements, it exceeded expectations for labor and materials. We continue to have to renew them across basins in different projects, different areas. Some of them have lasted, some of them haven't. So I think part of the discussion is today, and I hope to look at some of the techniques of installation, where they're installed, and what kind of things can be done to make sure that they last longer. I think there's also been some practices of disconnect from data analysis from the data collection, making sure that everybody who has access to analyze the data from Patagus understands, and there's a lot of concerns about what does the data from the data systems mean, how can you access the data, there's struggles. So how do you look at the metadata and understand? And there's a change in business model that's not really well coordinated. I think many people have a perception of loss of sovereignty, and our goal is to, continue to manage projects and manage the region and work collaboratively with partners to find solutions. And one thing is continuing 1 year at a time. Shoestring budgets and coming to it's not going to be a really good resolution of really getting a good plan for managing these systems, especially as we decrease our budgets regionally. So I think when we come to strategic recommendations for the project level, we have to prioritize and look at all the arrays, look at our projects. What do we need most? When we get to talk about inventories and other parts later in the workshop, we might be talking about looking at redundancies, opportunities for efficiencies. Do we move sites to different populations? We have a lot of arrays. What can we do? Or do we just remove things? Are things up to the point where they're obsolete and we no longer need it because the studies didn't? I think what we also want to look for is implementation standards for O&M. How are we doing technologies and really get the standard practice and then have certainty around the arrays that exist in the basin. We are trying to look for labor savings, and if we have that remote data collection possibility, if you have to go out weekly or we collect information remotely, it's a cost benefit. Some of these sites are going to be obviously better to go, and if they're in your backyard and you have your office right next to it, we don't want to put a modem or a satellite modem there; it's too expensive. Cost to operate these things from fuel modems are very expensive, but we want to make sure we have good quality, good reliability in the data infrastructure and assets that we put in the basin. I think we also want to talk about implementing metadata standards. So if there's site logs, if you're reporting information out from your pit arrays, what is that standard information? How do we exchange it? How do we get it to the badges for people to use and consume? What is that standard? Getting the uptime reports that are easy to consume from people who are doing run crew construction for other use to understand the basic information of how efficient was the array, and how good is your extrapolation analysis. So overall recommendation from the project brings us to our workshop, really, which is iCenter project and others recommended that we need to get the region together to talk about O&M and some standards. We want to, because of the dialogue and everything that were going on, there's a lot of a lack of communication. There's a lot of different regional entities. And we thought there is a need for a steering committee not to enhance what exists already with the Patagus steering committee, but really looking forward to the tributary side. So, how do we bring in those bodies and communicate and talk about the data management on the tributary side as well? So I think a recommendation is to really make sure that the steering committees can represent main stem, tributary, and all of those components together. I think one thing thing that we're trying to do at DPA is, moving towards a larger project. Doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be a lot of different contractors and contractors under it, but having clear line of sight at DPA as to all the projects that contribute to O&M, having a better understanding and getting that as an umbrella process, I think helps the transparency in the region to what are we spending, what is a priority, and how can we collaborate to bring the pools together so we're not projects that are really struggling and only have a $100,000 budget to M&E and O&M can benefit from it. So I think those are things that we're going to have to continue to talk about. On the analysis side, again, there's separation from analysis and the O&M. We want to make sure that the biologists who are operating and maintaining their arrays have the ability to weigh in on analysis that's being produced. I'm an example. I help produce some products for VBA, but we want to improve the communication between the people who produce the data. So we have to improve our communications and with everybody. I think we want to continue those analytical initiatives that are ongoing. We'll talk about those this afternoon. I think reinvestigating juvenile detection capabilities, adult breed range improvements. There's a lot of information that continues to happen. And just as one last example, a lot of information is registered at Patagus, but I know from our contracting and our process, there's a lot of sites that aren't accounted for, non-Patagus, whether it's duplex, half duplex, full duplex, different purposes, different intents, or maybe they're not being operated anymore. But there's a lot more arrays in the Columbia Basin than maybe registered currently. We want to make sure that we can get all the information registered, so it becomes more powerful for the region to use. On applications, just really high level, we're going to come into the next section and talk about this again, but we have tributary pit arrays are for population status, restoration effectiveness, hatchery evaluation, wild Scranton, life cycle, migration survivals, the models that we're producing, all use this information. I want to thank Kenneth first for the presentation of the NOSA workshop on the run reconstruction assessment tools and methodologies that they apply. We using pit array information, looking at temperature and fish migration, how do different fish get impacted, and where do we lose fish along the way. How do we look at a tributary out migration pattern? Where does fish go that are released from one population to the whole network of the Columbia? Or when you take the NOSA statement information, how do you take that steelhead estimate and communicate it to the region? So I think the last part of closing consideration is that one, EPA is losing revenue and decreasing available funds for farming. So how can we be smart about sharing that information and infrastructure and money to the network that we have? Second, EPA is concerned about investments in data management. We should not be duplicative, and we should be easily accessed and used. Okay, those are the goals and what we're trying to move forward with. And the last piece is accessibility. We're looking at site registered with Patagus, metadata operation information should be accessible. We have biologic data manager, other systems at Patagus to help manage that information. And we're looking for future O&M, new sites, and replacement needs to be prioritized through a collaborative process. The last thing that we're looking at is potential outcomes, agency participation, interest in tributary arrays and steering committees for planning and prioritization, participation in PNAP web work groups for published standards, and seek cost-effective resources for allocation for BPA partners. And okay, guys, I'll have one more last slide. Last slide. There it was. And looking for contract requirements. So we have status and trend, cost assessments. We have to understand what's going on. Look for O&M